Most people will never understand why their first $100,000 is the hardest money they'll ever make. They blame the economy. They blame their salary. They blame the system. But the real reason cuts deeper than any of that. The truth is, without capital, you're not playing the wealth-building game at all. You're just surviving, trading hours for dollars, caught in a cycle that feels like progress but leads nowhere. Before we go further, if you're serious about understanding how money actually works and you want more honest conversations about building real wealth, go ahead and subscribe. This isn't about hype or shortcuts. It's about the principles that actually separate those who build lasting financial security from those who stay stuck forever. Let me tell you something that might sting a little. You've probably heard about compound interest your whole life. Maybe you've seen those beautiful charts showing how 10% returns can turn modest savings into millions over 30 or 40 years. The math looks clean. The promise feels real. And then you look at your own bank account and realize you're trying to compound nothing. That's the cruel joke everyone discovers too late. Compound interest is completely useless if you don't have anything to compound in the first place. When Charlie Munger was young, he wasn't dreaming about billions or building empires. He was trying to figure out how to scrape together his first few $1,000s. Rent came due every month. Kids needed food and clothes. Life had a way of throwing expenses at him just when he thought he was getting ahead. Nobody handed him a cushion or a head start. And here's what he understood that most people never grasp: rich people aren't playing the same game you are. They already have chips on the table. You're still trying to buy into the game. The reason that first 100,000 feels impossible is brutally simple. You're working with muscle, not money. Every single dollar represents your sweat, your time, your energy. Every step forward feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill. You manage to save $500, and then your car breaks down. You stash away 1,000, and then your kid needs braces or the roof starts leaking. The world seems to conspire against anyone trying to climb out of the hole. Being poor is expensive in ways that people with money never have to think about. But here's where it gets interesting. There's an invisible line somewhere around that $100,000 mark. Once you cross it, something shifts. The money itself starts pulling its weight. A 10% return suddenly means something real. $10,000 on 100,000 is different from $50 on 500. It's not just about the numbers getting bigger. It's about reaching critical mass where your capital begins working alongside you instead of you doing all the heavy lifting alone. What's the biggest financial mistake you've learned from so far? Drop it in the comments below. Sometimes our biggest lessons come from admitting what didn't work. The first 100,000 might take you 10 years of grinding, saving, and saying no to things you want. The second 100,000 might take half that time. By the time you reach 500,000, you'll look back at those early years and barely recognize the struggle, assuming you still have the stomach to remember how hard it was. This isn't exaggeration. This is the mathematical reality of compound growth that nobody talks about in those pretty charts. You can be broke with intelligence. You can be broke with ambition, with charm, with good intentions. None of it matters until you build that base of capital. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being stubborn enough to keep stacking money when every fiber of your being wants to spend it on something that feels good right now. People romanticize hard work like it's some magic formula for wealth. They think if they just clock enough hours, if they just hustle hard enough, the universe will reward their effort. That's complete nonsense, and any honest look at the world proves it. If labor alone made people rich, coal miners would be billionaires. Construction workers would retire as millionaires. The truth is harder to swallow. Wages are capped by what someone will pay you. Effort doesn't scale. Time doesn't compound. You can work yourself into the ground and still have nothing to show for it the moment the paychecks stop coming. Charlie Munger saw this pattern everywhere when he was coming up. He knew people who worked harder than he did every single day. Factory workers putting in double shifts. Clerks staying late. People grinding away with everything they had. Some of them were smarter than him too. But they stayed broke because their sweat evaporated the moment it hit the floor. They never built capital. They never escaped the labor trap. Capital doesn't get tired. It doesn't need weekends off. It doesn't call in sick or come home drunk. It just sits there quietly multiplying if you're smart enough not to screw it up. That's the divide nobody wants to admit exists. Until you have money working for you, you're just another person trading time for dollars, and there are only so many hours in a day. If you're relying on raises or promotions or job hopping to get rich, you've already lost. You're playing a game where the best possible outcome is comfortable exhaustion. You can get a raise today, and tomorrow inflation steals half of it. You can land a fat salary, and taxes strip it down before you even see the money. You can hustle 3 jobs, and your body gives out before your bank account fills up. Labor keeps you alive. It pays the rent. But labor will never compound. That's why the first 100,000 is a war of attrition. You're clawing your way out of the labor trap, stacking the first pile of chips that can actually earn their own keep. Once that pile exists, once you cross that invisible line, everything changes. Suddenly 10% isn't a rounding error anymore. Suddenly the market can pay you more in your sleep than your boss pays you in a week. This isn't about quitting your job or pretending work doesn't matter. It's about understanding that work alone will never be the ticket to financial freedom. The world is absolutely full of broke geniuses who never escape the wage treadmill. The only way out is capital. Cold, hard, accumulated capital that works on your behalf every single day. The market has a cruel way of testing your patience long before it rewards you. In the beginning, the numbers feel almost insulting. You save $6,000 over an entire year. You invest it carefully. Maybe you get $600 back if things go well. $600. That's one broken air conditioner. That's a couple of dental bills. Nothing life-changing. Nothing that makes you feel like you're getting anywhere. And that's exactly why most people quit. They look at those puny returns and think it's not worth the sacrifice. They'd rather spend the money on a new phone, a vacation, a car lease. At least then they feel something immediate for their money. At least then they get that dopamine hit of consuming something new. This is the trap that catches almost everyone. The small numbers feel meaningless, so people never let them grow into big numbers. They strangle compound growth before it ever has a chance to show what it can do. Watch people over a lifetime and you'll see the pattern repeated endlessly. They start saving, get bored, pull the money out, spend it. Then they start again, quit again. They never understand that the only way compounding works is if you let time do the heavy lifting. You can't rush it. You can't hack it. You can't skip the boring years. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants to grind through the years where the returns don't impress anyone, not even yourself. But those boring years are the toll you pay to reach the magic of compounding. You can't skip them just because you're impatient. The numbers don't bend to your emotional needs. When Munger was young, he didn't see magic in the numbers either. His first investments barely moved the needle. He had bills, setbacks, even disasters that wiped out months of progress. It felt like running in place on a treadmill that never stopped. But the discipline of sticking with it when everything inside you screams to quit, that's where the game turns. One year you notice your capital earned as much as you saved from your paycheck. The next year it earned more than you saved. That's when people around you start asking how you got so lucky. They want to know your secret, your insider tip, your magic formula. There is no secret. It was endurance. It was refusing to quit when quitting felt like the only sane option. If you value this kind of honest financial wisdom, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of people who understand that real wealth comes from patience and discipline, not tricks and shortcuts. The trick isn't brilliance. The trick is not quitting when the numbers are small and unimpressive. If you can survive the psychological pain of watching money crawl instead of sprint, eventually you'll get to see it fly. But almost nobody survives that part. They look at a few $100s of returns and decide it isn't worth the trouble. That's why they stay poor. Small numbers test your patience. Large numbers reward it. But you'll never see the second if you can't stomach the first. Which of Charlie Munger's principles do you find hardest to practice in your own life? Let's talk about it in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in the struggle makes all the difference. The fastest way to guarantee you'll stay poor is to raise your lifestyle every time you raise your income. Most people do exactly this without even thinking about it. They get a raise at work, and the first thing they do is upgrade. Bigger car. Nicer apartment. Vacation they couldn't afford last year. They call it rewarding themselves. Call it what it really is, shooting yourself in the foot financially. You don't need a PhD in finance to understand this basic arithmetic. If you spend everything you make, you will never build capital. If you keep inflating your lifestyle to match your income, you will never cross that line to your first 100,000. It's not philosophy or opinion. It's simple math that refuses to care about your feelings or excuses. Charlie Munger watched lawyers, doctors, even executives fall into this trap. These were people earning six figures, sometimes more. But they lived like royalty. They leased the German cars, bought the houses with more rooms than they could possibly use, sent their kids to private schools they could barely afford. From the outside, they looked successful. Inside their financial reality, they were one or two paychecks away from panic. And here's the worst part, they felt entitled to it. They thought working hard meant they deserved to spend freely. Sure, maybe you deserve it. You also deserve to stay broke if that's how you approach money. Wealth is built on discipline, not indulgence. Munger lived through the Great Depression. He saw men with fancy suits and nothing in the bank when reality came knocking. You learn quickly that appearances don't compound. Savings do. Investments do. Capital does. If you want that first 100,000, you cannot play the status game. Forget what the neighbors think. Forget what your colleagues drive. Forget impressing people you don't even like. The game is brutally simple. Earn more than you spend. Save the difference. Invest it wisely. Do that long enough without sabotaging yourself, and you'll hit the milestone. Fail at it, and you'll stay on the treadmill until you're old and bitter, wondering why it never worked out for you. People sabotage themselves because they confuse comfort with progress. They think living better means getting ahead. It doesn't. Real progress is invisible to everyone around you. It's the growing balance in accounts you don't touch. It's the compounding you don't interrupt for something shiny. The car loses value the second you drive it off the lot. The fancy dinner is gone in 2 hours. The vacation is just a memory by next week. But the capital you stash away quietly works for you every single day, whether you're awake, asleep, or eventually dead. If you can't control your urge to consume, you'll never have the discipline to invest. That's why most people never get their first 100,000. It's not that they can't earn it. It's that they can't stop spending it long enough for it to matter. Here's the fundamental difference between you and the truly wealthy. They have capital and you don't. Capital is leverage that tilts the board in your favor. It doesn't complain, doesn't get sick, doesn't demand benefits or vacation days. It just compounds silently in the background of your life. Take $100,000 earning 10% annually. It produces $10,000 a year without you lifting a finger. That's almost $1,000 a month, the same as working some part-time job, except you don't have to show up. You don't have to deal with customers or bosses. The money just appears because your capital is working on your behalf. Now compare that with someone still hustling for every dollar. They're saving a few hundred a month if they're disciplined. Maybe they're on the financial treadmill, sweating to stash away scraps. Meanwhile, the person with capital is collecting returns while sleeping. That's what real leverage looks like in practice. Once you have capital, the rules of the game fundamentally change. Banks take your calls. Opportunities come your way that never existed before. You can take a calculated risk without risking starvation or homelessness. Munger saw this in his own journey. When he had nothing, every mistake threatened to wipe him out completely. By the time he had capital, he could afford to be wrong occasionally. And he was wrong plenty of times. The difference was he could recover and keep playing. That's what leverage provides. People dramatically underestimate this reality. They think money is just numbers in a bank account. It isn't. It's freedom. It's options. It's a safety net. It's a battering ram that opens doors for you that will never open for someone living paycheck to paycheck. You can buy stocks when they're cheap and everyone's panicking. You can hold investments when the market crashes and others are forced to sell at losses. You can start a business without begging for loans from people who don't believe in your vision. You can walk away from a toxic boss because you're not one rent payment away from disaster. This is the moment we need to talk about something critical. If you're getting value from this honest perspective on building wealth, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to share the principles that actually work, the ones that separate dreamers from builders. Don't just watch and leave. Join the community. That's what $100,000 really means. It's not just digits on a screen. It's the moment you stop being financially powerless. It's when you start having agency in your own economic life. 10% on 100,000 won't make you rich overnight, but it proves the system works. It shows you that everything you've heard about compound growth is actually true. From there, everything compounds faster: your returns, your confidence, your ability to stomach risk and volatility. Until you have capital, you're just a laborer with dreams and wishes. Once you have it, you finally get a seat at the table. And in this world, the table is where real money gets made. The opportunities, the deals, the investments that actually move the needle, those are reserved for people with capital to deploy. You don't need brilliance to get rich. You just need to avoid stupidity. But here's the problem: most people can't do it. They chase status with borrowed money. They load up credit cards buying things they don't need to impress people they don't even like. They take out car loans for vehicles that lose value every month. They buy houses they can't afford, stretching themselves thin, and then act shocked when they never have a dime left over to invest. Debt is the opposite of compounding. Instead of money working for you, it works against you relentlessly, silently, every single day. Interest charges pile up. Minimum payments trap you. The financial burden grows heavier while you grow older. Munger watched people with decent salaries stay trapped for life because they couldn't stop being stupid with money. They refinanced homes to buy toys. They ran up tabs dining out. They carried credit card balances charging 20% interest while bragging about making 10% in the stock market. That isn't investing. That's self-delusion wearing a fancy suit. The cost of financial stupidity is invisible at first. You don't feel the chains until they're tight around your neck. But by then, you've wasted the precious years when compounding could have been working on your side. In 1973, Munger watched smart people lose fortunes because they bought stocks on margin. They borrowed money to chase hot tips, thinking they were clever. When the market collapsed, their stupidity cost them everything. It didn't matter how much they believed in their stocks or how solid their research seemed. Debt doesn't care about your optimism or your convictions. Avoiding stupidity means saying no to things that glitter but rot from the inside. Easy credit. Get-rich-quick schemes. Gambling dressed up as sophisticated investing. You don't have to be a genius to sidestep these traps. You just have to be disciplined enough to walk away when something smells wrong. The first 100,000 is already hard enough without digging yourself a financial hole. Don't sabotage your own future by handing compound interest to credit card companies and banks instead of earning it for yourself. It's amazing how simple this game really is when you strip away all the noise. Spend less than you earn. Don't borrow money for junk. Save and invest the difference consistently. Stick with it through good times and bad. Simple doesn't mean easy, because human stupidity is a powerful force that destroys more wealth than any market crash. If you want to know why most people never reach that $100,000 milestone, look at their behavior patterns. It's not bad luck. It's not an unfair system. It's bad habits compounding in the wrong direction. Everyone loves the idea of compound growth. Nobody loves the reality of waiting for it. The first 100,000 isn't built in a month. It isn't built in a year. For most people grinding away in regular jobs, it takes a decade of saving consistently, investing wisely, and not doing stupid things. That's exactly why so few people ever get there. They don't have the stomach for boredom. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't make for exciting stories. It looks like saying no to dinners out when your friends are going. It looks like driving the old car for a few more years when you could technically afford a new one. It looks like passing up the vacation you could swing on credit because you know those dollars belong on the battlefield of compound growth, not in a memory that fades in a week. People think discipline is some heroic character trait. It isn't. It's doing the dull, obvious thing long enough to win. Munger learned this when he was young. When everyone else was busy keeping up with the Joneses, buying things to impress neighbors who didn't care, he kept his head down and stacked capital. Did it feel fun? Absolutely not. Did it look exciting to anyone watching? Not at all. But those dull years are where real wealth gets forged in the fire of daily choices. The trick is not breaking when times get hard. Markets will fall, and they'll fall hard. You'll feel like a complete fool for saving when stocks drop 30%. You'll be tempted to sell everything, to quit, to tell yourself the whole thing was pointless. That's when discipline separates people who eventually get wealthy from everyone else who stays stuck. Anyone can save money when the market is roaring upward. Anyone can invest when optimism is high and everyone's making money. But when everything turns to ashes, and eventually it will, that's when you discover who has the backbone to keep going. Munger saw people with every advantage, intelligence, connections, high salaries, prestigious education, blow themselves up financially because they couldn't endure the grind. They needed excitement. They needed to feel clever. So they chased schemes, gambled on fads, or quit when the pain of discipline became uncomfortable. Discipline was beneath them. They wanted shortcuts. Well, discipline is what actually gets you across the finish line. It's not raw intelligence. It's not luck or connections. After a certain point, it's not even hard work. It's the sheer stubborn refusal to quit shoveling coal into the furnace of compound growth while everyone else wanders off looking for something easier. Tell me in the comments, what principle from Charlie Munger will you commit to applying starting today? Writing it down makes it real. Let's hold each other accountable. You don't need to be brilliant. You just need to be relentless. The market eventually rewards endurance. It always has throughout history. So if you want that first $100,000, forget about finding brilliance or shortcuts or secret formulas. Just endure. Endure the boredom of saving month after month. Endure the setbacks when unexpected expenses hit. Endure the years when it feels like nothing is happening and your friends are out living it up while you're being careful. Because here's the truth nobody tells you, something is happening during those boring years. Compound growth just doesn't show itself until you've earned the right to see it through years of discipline. There's a moment in wealth building that feels almost supernatural when you finally experience it. It's the day your capital earns more than you do from working. Until that moment arrives, you've been dragging a rock uphill through quicksand. Every dollar came from sweat and sacrifice. Every bit of progress came from self-denial that hurt. You saved when you wanted to spend. You endured when you wanted to quit. And you wondered constantly if the pain was even worth it. Then one year, you look at your investment statements. Your portfolio quietly produced $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, more than you could possibly save from your paycheck, and suddenly you realize you've crossed an invisible line. That's when capital starts talking back to you. It whispers in the language of dollars, "Relax a little. I'll carry more of the load now." That whisper changes your psychology forever. For the first time in your financial life, you're not just a laborer trading time for money. You're a capitalist. Your dollars have become employees working on your behalf. Unlike real employees, they don't complain, don't strike, don't gossip, don't need health insurance or retirement plans. They just compound year after year without taking a single sick day. This is the point where the entire game flips on its head. Saving feels less like sacrifice and more like feeding a machine that pays you back with interest. Watching the balance grow becomes genuinely addictive in the best possible way. You want to contribute more, not less, because you can finally see the system working. It's also the point where people who never did the work start calling you lucky. They see your capital snowballing and assume you caught some break they missed. They didn't watch you eat cheap dinners for years. They didn't see you drive that old car with the weird noise while they bought new ones. They missed the decade of grinding that built the foundation. Luck has absolutely nothing to do with it. Discipline does. Once your capital outpaces your labor income, the wealth curve steepens dramatically. 100,000 becomes 200. 200 becomes 500. Eventually, the compounding dwarfs any raise you could possibly beg from a boss. This is exactly why that first 100,000 is everything. Without reaching it, you never hit the tipping point where the system tilts in your favor. With it, you finally get momentum that feeds itself. But here comes the critical warning. If you sabotage yourself after this point by pulling money out for lifestyle inflation, chasing fads, or panicking during market downturns, you can still blow up everything you built. Capital doesn't forgive stupidity any more than it forgives neglect. Handle it properly, though, and it becomes your silent partner for life. That's the reward for enduring the long, boring climb. One day you wake up and your money is doing more work than you ever could with your own two hands. And the best part? It never asks for a paycheck or a pat on the back. Before we wrap this up, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Real financial education is rare. Most content is selling you something or hyping you up. This is different. This is about principles that actually work over decades. Reaching $100,000 isn't the finish line. It's just the starting gun for the real race. And plenty of people still find ways to blow everything even after they get there. The moment most folks get ahead, they start thinking they're financial geniuses. They forget how long it took to climb that hill, and they start sprinting downhill straight into stupidity. Munger saw it repeatedly throughout his lifetime. Someone finally saves 100,000, and instead of letting it compound properly, they decide they're suddenly the next Warren Buffett. They chase hot stocks. They speculate with options. They fall for whatever shiny nonsense the financial media is selling that week. Just like that, 10 years of discipline vanishes in one stupid gamble. Others sabotage themselves by celebrating their progress prematurely. They hit 100,000, then reward themselves with a bigger mortgage, a fancier car, and vacations that burn through the very capital that was supposed to make them free. They confuse a milestone with a finish line. They cash out before compounding can even show its real power. There's also the dangerous problem of leverage. People think borrowing against their portfolio is a clever shortcut. It isn't. It's a time bomb. Munger watched brilliant people go completely broke because they borrowed against their investments, certain the market could only go up. Then 1987 hit. Or 2000. Or 2008. The market always finds a way to humble the arrogant and punish the overleveraged. The cruel truth is this: building the first 100,000 requires discipline. Keeping it requires humility. Growing it requires patience. Screw up any one of those three virtues, and you're right back to zero. And don't kid yourself, going back to zero after you've tasted financial progress is worse than never having started at all. The first 100,000 is hard, brutally hard, but it's the battle you must fight. Nobody can compound zero. Nobody can rescue you from bad habits. Nobody can save you if you insist on living above your means or making stupid decisions with money. It isn't about brilliance. It isn't about secret formulas. It isn't about finding some financial guru to whisper magic in your ear. It's about discipline applied consistently over years. Spend less than you earn. Save the difference. Invest it wisely in things you understand. Repeat until you cross that invisible line. Simple. Brutal. Unforgiving. If you can't do that, nobody can help you no matter how much advice they give. But if you can do it, if you can endure the boredom and sacrifice, you'll unlock the only thing that truly separates the wealthy from the poor, capital that works harder than you ever could on your best day. People love to complicate money. They invent jargon, write 1,000-page books, sell expensive courses, all to distract you from the ugly truth. You need to endure years of boredom and self-denial before compound growth shows up to carry its weight. Most people won't do it. That's exactly why most people stay broke. But if you have the backbone, the discipline, and just enough common sense to avoid the big stupid mistakes, debt for consumption, envy spending, lifestyle creep, you can get there. And once you do, the game changes forever. Your money starts working. Your risk tolerance expands. Opportunities open up. And you stop being a powerless laborer begging for scraps from an employer. So here's the final word: get that first 100,000 by any honest means necessary. Cut your expenses ruthlessly. Increase your income however you can. Ignore what the neighbors think of your old car. Just get there. Because until you do, you're not even in the real game. You're standing outside the casino watching through the window. And if you're still not spending less than you earn, nobody can help you. Not Charlie Munger. Not Warren Buffett. Not any financial advisor or YouTube channel. The math doesn't bend for excuses. Start there. Start today. Your future self will thank you for the discipline you show right now. If this perspective resonated with you, subscribe and join us. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the best time to start building your first 100,000 was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now.